Jesus, we have a strange way of presenting him. We have a great deal of emphasis in the last 3 years of his life, and even a greater emphasis in the last week of his life and in the last 3 hours of his life, and very little about the first 30 years of his life. These years are called the hidden years, or the years of silence, because with the exception of one incident that St. Luke gives us, we have nothing that Jesus ever said. He lived with his parents very quietly. Very few people even knew about him during this period. We might even wonder why did Jesus spend so much time at home. He could have been out in the world, started his ministry early. It didn't work out that way for different reasons. And it was not to be because in that culture, until you were 30 years old, people didn't really take you seriously out in the world. And besides which, it's very illustrative, I would think, that Jesus was the Redeemer of the world, and he spent more time in the family than he did out in public, which gives an idea to priorities. If you want to fix the world, start with the family. That would only make sense. Some people might be tempted to think that the Holy Family really can't teach us anything, and that Jesus was an easy child to raise. Well, was he an easy child to raise? The answer is no child is easy to raise. I don't really have to tell you that. When in Jesus' case, we have somebody who's a child prodigy. And prodigy is very much a challenge for people to raise because even the parents don't quite understand the child's needs. It's only been in recent years, I think, that gifted children are given opportunities that they didn't have years ago. And Jesus was a prodigy. I mean, he was very brilliant, but he was a child, which is something that sometimes those two things don't go together all that well. I mean, sometimes a very bright child can be very awkward in many other ways. Now, I'm not necessarily stating that Jesus was a problem. That is my point. I'm simply pointing out that he was a challenge for Mary and Joseph, given who he was. And his brilliance was indicated in when he went to the temple. He told the teachers of the law some things that just amazed them. I mean, usually a 13-year-old is not going to say too many things that will amaze people who are well-schooled in the field of religion, for example. And his parents didn't understand what he was talking about when he said that he had to be in his father's house. What was all this about? And Mary took it to heart. She thought about it and prayed about it, but didn't quite understand what he meant. Jesus came to an awareness of his vocation when he was young. Now, he had to be taught how to speak because he was an infant. Infants can't talk. He was taught how to read. God used a human mind and human nature. Jesus was not a finished product. In fact, Luke says that Jesus grew in age and grace and wisdom, meaning his humanity had to develop. This is how it developed in the context of the family, which is the normal school of formation for a human person. When Jesus was growing up in the household, he started thinking about, and learned about the fact that his mother conceived him miraculously. What did that mean? He applied it to his mind, mentally he thought about it. And he began realizing, because Joseph was not his biological father, that he, meaning Jesus, had divine origin. And this is indicated in the temple when he tells his parents that he had to be in his father's house. He started calling God his Father. This might not seem news to us because we call God Father. The reason we do that is because the Jews didn't call him Father. It was not part of the way they addressed God. So Jesus was a religious innovator from a very young age. He was 13 years old. He was calling God Father. And when people asked him the Virgin. All of these things fit together. He made sense out of these things as he grew in age and grace and wisdom. We can see where the Holy Family was of immense value and importance to Jesus. I mean, in his formation, in his human formation. Some people might be tempted to think that the Holy Family can't teach us anything, but it teaches us many things, one of which is that families are really things that are given by God for the fulfillment of his purposes, which are largely have to do with forming human beings. To have an intact household is a great blessing, and mother and dad have a great responsibility on their hands, bringing children into the world and educating them. Father Paul Marx, who's deceased about 10 years ago, I think, was a great apostle of light. He used to travel the world, and he would tell people how important it was that they were involved in this ministry of bringing children into the world and educating them. Pope John Paul II likewise indicated that this is really the greatest work that anybody can do. Some people, of course, are called to special vocations, such as being a priest or a sister, which are very legitimate things, but most people are not. And it stands to reason that most people are called to be married and to have a home, to raise children. The future of civilization passes by way of the family. The future of humanity passes by way of the family. The future of the church passes by way of the family. Much is at stake in the welfare and well-being of our society and of individuals in our society, including their eternal welfare. These things are largely based on and dependent upon family and the help of families in our society. There are many families, of course, that are struggling for one reason or another, and families, many of them are broken families today. I know there are people who are living a rather heroic lives as single parents and so forth. We must always support people who have difficulties and challenges connected with family life. The best way of having a family is for people of faith is to bring Jesus into the home. To do this has many blessings. It doesn't mean that people won't have any difficulties, but it means at least the family unit will be blessed. One of the stories about St. Bernadette, she was the one who saw Our Lady at Lourdes in 1858. During the time of the appearances of Our Lady, her family was living in what had been a jail, a one-room jail. I visited this place a number of times, and it's a small room with a fireplace, and the family lived in this little area, and she had several younger siblings, whose parents were there. But at the time, the only place they could afford was renting this space in the former jail, so it had been a jail cell, in other words. At the time, there was a man who lived upstairs from the Subaru family, and he said he never heard them, except he would hear their voices when they were praying rosary. The voices would come up to the flooring. Now, the Subarus had a difficult life because the father seemed that he never had quite enough money, and the family had to move again and again and again. And it was a difficult life. But they were holy, and they lived their faith. They took it seriously. They were rich in that sense, even though they were materially poor. So we can see that God works in such ways. And if we look at the Holy Family, we have a poor family. Mary and Joseph didn't have very much. And we have Jesus being raised in this context. The thing is, how many of us would choose to be born into a poor family and to be raised accordingly? Not that we would have had any say in the matter at all, of course, but God, the Almighty, immortal, and infinite God, chose to enter into the world through being raised in a poor family environment, meaning a holy family, of course, but one that was without the trappings, material trappings that so many people value so much. One of the reasons today that there are so many difficulties in families is that many families attach too much to their material well-being and not enough to the spiritual well-being. And I see that. I've been in 7 different parishes at least, and I can tell you, and I'm not picking on any parish, believe me, just as an observer, that there are many parents who don't really do much about living their faith. And I don't know what they're thinking. Do they think that when the children grow up, they'll automatically be good citizens of heaven and so forth, being good Catholic, Christian people? People need to bring their children to Mass, at least when the children reach about the age of reason, and pray at home with them, teach them the virtues. I mean, if a person doesn't learn how to be good at home, he might not learn it at all. St. Paul talks about compassion, patience, forgiving others, forbearance, loving others. Most of these things are learned in the home. So we really need to pray for young parents especially. They will work with their children from an early age. And once the children become teenagers, it's hard to get them back if they haven't had any upbringing when they were small. And pray for people who are willing to enter into marriage and looking at it as a vocation. Marriage is a very important service rendered to God. It's not a ticket to one's own well-being and so forth. I mean, it's not an easy thing, but there aren't easy ways in life. I mean, anything that's worthwhile is challenging. So people are willing to enter into marriage and to be generous and raise their children and to raise them and to do the will of God. And many blessings will come out of these things. And one reason we have a dearth of vocations in the priesthood today is we don't have good family life in our society. Many people don't have the benefit of an intact family, or maybe they don't have very many other people at home at all that care about them. I mean, you run into many things. And one of the reasons our inner cities are in such turmoil, but you'll never hear politicians talk about it because they're not politically correct, is because there are many broken homes in the inner cities, and things are a big mess. In fact, the rate of children being born out of wedlock is 40% in our society, and in some demographics it's up as high as 70%. I mean, all of these things just do not bode well. So as a church, we should be something of a light in the world of darkness, urging people to follow the truth, to restore people's confidence in life and love, and the importance of children to love life, to love what God has done, what He has made, what He continues to do. The Lord continues to work in the world today. He continues to work in the world largely through the ministry of husbands and wives and their families. I'm happy that our parish is having a marriage and family ministry. I would really hope that people would support it. I know some of you are already involved in it. To support our families, to strengthen them, to pray for them, to pray with them, all of these things. I can think of a few things that are more important than doing that. So please apply your minds to this. What can we do for the families of our community to make them truly what the Lord wants them to be? Jesus came from a family. He didn't put the family on a pedestal. The family is not an end in itself, but it is certainly a very important vehicle